Is what we saw from Sam Howell, that improvement, that progression, that growth, however you want to choose to phrase that, is it real? Is the comfort level that we have seen from him with one NFL start, his second offense in 2 years already, is what we're seeing from him real, or is it a mirage? Pat, I'll let you jump in right away because he's your boy as much as anybody.
Yeah, I've been pro Sam for a while. I was pro Sam at Carolina, which pains me as a UVA fan. I mean, he's got, I think, all the tools you need in a quarterback. But even going back to like Haskins and back to Ramsey and all these quarterbacks we've had over the last bazillion years, quarterbacks in the league, like arm talent isn't everything. We learned that with both the people I mentioned. But when you can put the ball in tight spots, you can be good. Like that was what do we always complain about Heineke, or even later with Alex Smith? Like, yeah, sure, maybe they knew the offense really well, like the back of their hand. We always would go like, oh, great backup. We come in, they know the offense like that. But to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, you need to be able to put the ball on a dime only where the receiver can catch it, and only a handful of people can do that. As an example, if you're on the opposite hash and you're throwing an out route, that ball has to be on a line on the outside shoulder. Like that's a throw that Heineke can't make, as an example.
Yes.
Howell can make that in his sleep. And everyone talks about the Dallas game when he hit Terry in stride just on an absolute dime of a bomb. But the reality is that his best throw that game was probably the out route or comeback route to Dotson when he put it on his outside shoulder so Dotson could turn and run for another 10 yards. We haven't had a quarterback that can do that in a really, really long time. And I understand, at least from the semantics of it, that he's a 5th-round pick and all this fun stuff.
That means
but if you go back to his – it means nothing. If you go back to his sophomore year, which was 2020, he balled out. He balled out as a rookie in the ACC too, and everyone's like, well, look what he did his junior year. He lost Daz Newsome. He lost – who was on
Diami, Michael
yes,
Carter.
He lost Diami, Carter,
Williams.
And Javonte Williams. Like all those – that talent was lost, but I don't even think that's the biggest reason he struggled that year. And I'm putting struggled in quotation marks. He still put up 800 yards rushing and 20-plus touchdowns. But the offensive line for North Carolina his junior year was a sieve. I mean, we're talking like 4-string preseason game 3 bat. And as a result, he had to run the ball all the time, and he got beat up. I mean, he just constantly was hit. He ran for 800 yards. Those numbers start dipping, and as a result, his draft stock dipped. And it's not lost to me that it would be A, hilarious, and B, just like the most perfect beginning to the Dan Snyder era if we just stumbled into a franchise quarterback in the 5th round of last year that he was the owner, and then all of a sudden he's back, or he leaves, and Howell's like, yep, I'm a franchise guy year 1.
The irony of that would be so exercising in the sense of like you're gone, and all of a sudden
the story's perfect. And I think, look, I'm a big believer. I was a big believer last year. I thought he should have. I know Ron keeps putting his damn foot in his mouth. He probably should have started last year, but the thing I'm probably most excited about is we went all in on him. He's the guy. He knows he's the guy. And most importantly, EB, Bieniemy, who's probably the most important part of our offseason outside of Josh Harris, is going to tailor that offense entirely to Howell. And I think it's going to hump. I'm really excited about it.
I think you hit on a couple of salient points that popped things in my mind. You started with like the arm strength being overrated, and then kind of like circled back on the other end. And I was going to disagree with you when you said the arm strength is overrated, because my perspective, and I've said this many times in today's NFL game, that yes, growing up until I would say probably about 10 years ago, I would say arm strength was the most overrated attributes for an NFL quarterback. How many quarterbacks have failed because we were tantalized by the arm strength and the combination of athleticism that provided with it? Kyle Bowler, J.P. Lozman, Marcus Russell. I mean, just the list goes on and on and on and on of all these guys who are just these physical specimens who just couldn't do a damn thing with it. I do believe the tide has turned in a big way, as far as you have to have that super freak quarterback in order to succeed in today's NFL game. Like I said, there's a reason why Mahomes is one of one, so let's put him aside. But the Josh Allen, Justin Herbert archetype is kind of what you need. And Sam Howell is not that, to be clear. But I think what was so indicative of him, the one throw that he made this preseason, I think it was the Ravens game, was that 3rd and 15 dart that he had to Cole Turner, where like it was that he was
after his terrible sack,
the completely ill-advised decision. But that frozen rope that he put in almost triple coverage, that was the one that I would say, as much as anything he's done this offseason, that made me be like, I needed that. Because you made a great point. It's like Alex Smith could drive the cars as well as anyone. Taylor Heineke was so good at operating Scott Turner's offense. But there was that ability to deliver the rocket into the tight windows that was just sorely lacking. And Howell has that. combined with what I mentioned in our notes as being this early comfort level in the offense where he's not skittish, his footwork is underneath him, he's progressing through the offense, he's taking the check down because the check down is the smart decision right there based on what he's seeing. And as he starts to develop more comfort in the offense, then he knows which buttons to push or where you can kind of get away with those YOLO throws or those throw it into triple coverage and trust his arm throws. The point being, there's a progression from him that we're seeing that what we're seeing is not uncomfortable, or like what he's seeing doesn't look foreign to him. He's in command, again, no pun intended, but he's in command of the operation around him. And I think for someone, again, who started only one regular season game, there's something to be said about.
Yeah, I think that throw he threw to, who was it, Turner? The other part about that throw that I loved, and this has less to do with Howell as it does just the offense as a whole. And I get it's preseason, and I could be looking too much into it. I mean, that's kind of why I'm excited for real games, so we can be like, oh, well, maybe, you never know. How many times last year was it 3rd and 15, and we're just throwing some wide receiver screen or like a draw play? Just something stupid. And, it's just like, hey, punt, and let's pray our defense is good enough to hold them, which most times they were. But, like, I think that aggressive mind of Bieniemy came out there. Like, 3rd and 15, put Howell in shotgun and let him rip it. And to your point, there's 3 defenders around there, and that ball could be in one place, and it was there in a hurry.
And you have that quarterback who can that was – so, again, this is a stupid example, but I remember we were watching the preseason game against the Chiefs last year when we played them. And it was like the defense would get them in 3rd and 12, 3rd and 11, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9. And Mahomes is just – it was like –
he's ridiculous.
He was just – he could close his eyes and he was throwing and completing these throws. And it was the most demoralizing thing you've ever watched. Forget for a fan. Forget for like how the players on the field must feel, being like, how the fuck do we stop this guy from in the most adverse situations, let alone, being a fan and just screaming from your couch. And the ability to have that guy who can be like, nope, 3rd and 11, I can go do some shit. I can kind of bend the matrix to my will, like a quarterback who's shown the ability to do that. Again, the guys that we've referenced, they couldn't do that. And then, you had somebody with the physical talent of Haskins who just didn't have the brain. I mean, just didn't have 2 brain cells to rub together to do that.
I also think there's Ron. Every time Ron talks about Howell, he says the same thing. He's like, keeps learning from his mistakes. Don't have to like correct him twice, which is great. It makes me happy. He's still going to make really dumb penalties. He does already. You can tell he likes to hold that ball a little too long. I won't call it happy feet because I don't think he's scared to get hit. I just think he holds onto that ball, hoping for that big play.
I was going to say he wants to make YOLO throws. He has a little bit of hero ball in him.
And I do wonder if my hope, at least, is the joint practices after the Cardinals game, and then we play the Broncos and the Bills. Like I'm hoping that kind of fades. Because I'm wondering if it comes from he's got Dotson and McLaurin and Curtis and Logan. And I said for years our wide receivers suck and we need to change it. Now they're awesome. And he can't take a sack in practice. So part of me wonders if he's just sitting there waiting like he is in practice because it's a mental rep so often of waiting for these guys to get open because eventually they will. But that's my worry early on is he holds the ball too long. Now, I don't know what week 1's going to look like. We might not even have a team to play against based on what the Cardinals are doing.
Yeah, I know.
But week 2 in Denver against a very good defense will be a very telling and eye-opening game, I think, to see where he really is. And I'm really excited about it because, I mean, look, you could fucking put you back there, quarterback, and I'll be like, you know what? I like it. Rajon, he's got it. He knows the playbook inside and out. Like, I'll convince myself of something. Hell, I mean, I thought Rex Grossman was going to lead us to all the glory. I don't know. There's something about Howell that I really like. Kind of like, we used to talk about this with Heineke, and I hate to bring Heineke even into this conversation, but like Heineke kind of sucked all the time, but then you get him in a 2-minute drill when he didn't have to think, and all of a sudden he was really good.
He could just go out and put his nuts out.
Just let him play. Anytime you put him in a structure, he was, throwing picks to lose games. But as soon as it was like, just fucking go, he was pretty, he wasn't bad. I get the sense that Howell's going to be like that the whole game. Every time he drops back, I'm going to be like, all right, let's rip. And I'm excited for that because we haven't really had that before. Hell, we've only had a quarterback throw 30 touchdowns one time, and that was in 1967.
You touched on him a little bit with Howell in terms of like the shit that he went through at North Carolina. And I think it's not happy feet to your point, but I think his penchant for like hero ball way too long in the pocket just comes from that again, PTSD, habit, whatever you want to phrase it as, that he has to generate something big because he is the only source of offense. Like that's the scar tissue that he's carrying with him. Because again, once you lost your entire supporting cast like he did between his junior and senior year, whatever the last year he was in college, like, yeah, the entire North Carolina operation, as well as is well documented, is like, hey, go do something. Go make something happen. Sam Howell, you're this alleged top 10 NFL draft pick. You are our entire offense. And I think he's still working through that, as opposed to being able to utilize this cachet of incredible weapons that he does have around him that we'll touch on in just a moment.